Hello everyone, we are broadcasting now. Just we'll leave a couple of minutes for more people to join and then we'll start. Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's Energy Talk. My name is Inessa Shahnazarova. I'm the co-founder and executive director at the Investing Network, which is a niche consultancy fostering deployment of renewable energy in Central Asia, the Caucasus and Black Sea. We are delighted to be partnering with Trina Solar today to deliver this energy talk dedicated to Central Asia's solar PV growth opportunities and the latest solutions. Thanks to all of you for joining. Your participation is really important for us. And before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items so that you know how to participate in today's energy talk. At any time during the talk, you will have the opportunity to submit your questions to our speakers. To do so, please use Q&A function, which you can find at the bottom of the control panel. Just type your questions into Q&A and then we will try to address as many questions as we can at the end. We'll do this verbally. This is going to be quite interactive, so you can see all the questions posted by other attendees. You can comment on these questions and you can even upvote these questions to let us know that they are really popular. Also, to make this even more interactive, we are going to launch a couple of polls. Please take an active part in them and then we will share with you the results afterwards. We are really grateful to Trina Solar for the opportunity to deliver this energy talk to you. We are going to start with the presentations and we are going to have Lim Cheung-boon, Head of Product and Marketing at Trina Solar Asia Pacific, speaking today alongside our eminent speakers, Stanley Zhu, System Solutions Senior Engineer at Sungrow, Yernar Bilyarov, Member of the Board of Directors, Solar Power Association of Kazakhstan, Sanya Persadayeva, Managing Director at Unicase Law Firm, and Ton Nanston, Senior Investment Officer at FMO. Thanks to all of our speakers, and we are also grateful to our supporting association, Solar Power Association of Kazakhstan, European Ukrainian Energy Agency, and also EUROUZ, which is Europe Uzbekistan Association for Economic Cooperation. Huge thanks to our media partners for disseminating information about these energy talks. Those are Uzbekistan Energy Monitor, Uzdaily, Solar Business Hub, and Vogue News. And I think before we get started, I want to launch the first poll so that we know our audience better. So the question is, what part of the solar industry do you work within? Is it manufacturer, developer, IPP, EPC, consultant, or other? Okay, let's now end polling and I will share the results with you. Okay, you can see that 11% representing manufacturer companies, 20% developer IPP, 13% EPC, 35% consultant, and 35% other. Okay. Thank you so much for participating in this poll. Our speakers will focus today on ongoing and upcoming solar PV projects in both Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. We will also focus on bankability of solar projects in emerging markets, and of course, we focus on technological solutions. So we'll start with Yernar Bilyarov, who will speak about solar PV in Kazakhstan. Yernar, sorry, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Inessa. Good afternoon to all participants of our energy talk. I'm very grateful to participate in this event. Before we start, I just want to give just few introduction remarks about the development, not only solar power solar power in Kazakhstan, but in general about the renewable energy in Kazakhstan. At the current moment, renewable energy of Kazakhstan is on the breaking point. We are now moving to a completely, let's say, different way for the development of renewable, and of course, it will affect to the development of solar energy projects in Kazakhstan. And today, I will describe you about what kind of changes we will see in the future for the next couple of years, and how it will affect to the, of course, investors, manufacturers of equipment, EPC contractors, and other service companies. So I will switch on to my presentation. Okay, is it works?
Yes, we can see it. Perfect.
Good. So before we will go to the main topic, I will give you just one slide about our presentation, our role, and what we're doing in Kazakhstan right now. So, in fact, Solar Power Association of Kazakhstan, or shortly SPAC, is a quite young organization. We established only in 2018, but our team has a very broad experience in development and implementation of renewable energy projects in Kazakhstan. We participated in development of the first large-scale solar project in Kazakhstan. It's called Burna 1, 50 megawatt, and then we participated in development of the second stage of this project, Burna 2, with additional 50 megawatts. So the total capacity of this project was 100 megawatt, and it was the first large-scale project in Kazakhstan. We attracted the first debt financing from European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. So it was the first project finance project in Kazakhstan, and it was unique situation for Kazakhstan, and it was a remarkable project. And now it's under operation. It works well, and in back to 2018, we decided with the support of Ministry of Energy, we decided to establish our association. And main role of our association is to consolidate all the different parties and players in the field of renewable energy sources. Not only about, it's called Solar Power Association of Kazakhstan, but we are covering all the renewable energy sector in Kazakhstan, because the legislation is the same to all types of renewable energy projects. We want to create a favorable condition for the development of the industry. Our mission is to form a joint position of all members of association to create and obtain attractive investment conditions to all parties, including investors, manufacturers, and EPC contractors and other different players. We are representing and we are protect interests of our members. We are conducting, let's say, outreach for the association members and interested investors on implementation of renewable energy project in Kazakhstan. We are improving investment climate by making proposals to the legislation. For example, in this year, in 2020, in the beginning of the 2020, our association participated in development of the law regarding the tax preferences for renewable energy projects. So after our work in beginning of 2020, we received new amendments to the Commercial Code of Kazakhstan. And in the frames of this Commercial Code of Kazakhstan, renewable energy projects now can receive tax preferences. For example, property tax 0%, corporate income tax 0%, and land tax 0%. Before these changes, renewable energy projects can only obtain custom duty preferences, and that's all. But now we have a much more broader incentives for renewable energy projects. We are working with the international financial institution to improve attraction of debt finance to Kazakhstan. For example, EBRD is one of the members of our association, and we are working directly with EBRD in this field. And also, we are representing our industry, renewable energy industry, on the international stage. That's shortly about the spec. Now, I want to show you how the legislation was developed during the during the period. And the first law was introduced in 2019, and it was the law on support of use of renewable energy sources. But at that time, in 2009, it was just general law. We didn't have sub laws on that stage. So if you look at the implementation of project, you will see that from 2009 to 2013, we didn't have large-scale renewable energy projects because we didn't have real tools how to implement projects. Everything was changed in 2013 when the first tool was implemented, and it was called mechanism of guaranteed purchase of electricity by the Financial Settlement Center for support of renewable energy sources. So this organization, Financial Settlement Center, it's like intermediary between the renewable energy investors projects and traditional coal generation companies. So Financial Settlement Center collects money from traditional power generation companies and provide these financial resources to the renewable energy projects. So in this law, in this mechanism, so we have a body who is responsible for the transaction of money. We have PPA contract for 15 years using fixed tariff. So all investors, they know that now they have a clear legislation concept how to work in Kazakhstan in renewable energy. And since 2013, we see that the first large-scale projects now started for implementation. And as I mentioned before, Burная 1 was the first large-scale project in Kazakhstan. Also in 2013, we had the concept of transition of the Republic of Kazakhstan to green economy. So in the frame of this concept, Kazakhstan have a target, different targets. The first target is to receive production of electricity by renewable energy sources out of total production of electricity by 3% by 2020. I would like to say that we already achieved this target, and later I will show you exact figures about this. Then the second target is to have 10% of the production of electricity by renewable energy sources by 2030. The next target is 50% by 2050, but it also includes not only renewable energy, but also alternative energy. The next step for law implementation, so implementation of law, it was development of auction system in Kazakhstan. Now we didn't have feed-in tariffs as it was in 2013. Now we moved completely to auction system. So for new investors that have willingness to come to enter to Kazakhstan market, you have to participate in these renewable energy auctions. This auction is are conducted each year. Ministry of Energy is completely in charge of the implementation of the schedule for these auctions. So and for this year, for 2020, all auctions was finished. So now, if you want to enter to Kazakhstan market, you have to look at the next period for 2021. And take into account these auction systems, what was the main aim of this auction system, let's say? It was decreasing of tariffs for renewable energy sources. And for example, for solar energy, we see the decrease of tariffs from 34.6 tenge per kilowatt to 69.96 tenge per kilowatt. So you see that it's the decrease was the double decrease in the tariffs. So next slide. What we had in 2020. So it was the recent changes on the 7/7/2020. Our president, Mr. have signed a new amendment to the law on support of use of renewable energy. What we have in these changes, in these amendments? The first is stimulation on construction of maneuverable capacities, or more specific, it's hydropower plants. The second is establishing of throw tariffs for renewable energy support. The third is creation of favorable conditions for the development of renewable energy. For the third point is if we'll talk about more concrete, so it's provision of financial support from the government to the financial settlement center in case of failure to meet its obligation on payments to renewable energy projects. The second, it's extension of PPA contract from the current 15 years to 20 years. And the third, it's implementation of centralized purchase and sale of float electricity through the FSC. These changes have direct impact on development of solar energy in Kazakhstan. And more specific, the first point, the stimulation of the construction of maneuverable capacities of hydropower plants. The government of Kazakhstan, or Ministry of Energy, they decided they want to focus more on the hydropower plants in order to increase maneuverable capacities. And for the next auctions in 2021 and maybe 2022, the auctions for solar power projects will be much more less. So, or maybe you will not see any auctions for solar power projects. Why? Because we have a big amount of solar projects in Kazakhstan right now, and later I will show you what we have in the power market of renewable power market of Kazakhstan. So this is a very important notice, because a lot of investors are now trying to enter to Kazakhstan market for the solar projects, but for the next years maybe we will not see any solar power projects in auctions. But anyway, we have to wait the formal decision of Minister of Energy in this regard. So, what was done by Kazakhstan in development of renewable energy projects? At the current moment, we have 1.5 gigawatt of installed capacity of renewable energy projects. As you see, majority out of this 1.5 gigawatt represented by the solar power projects with the amount more than 800 megawatt of installed capacity. The second is wind power plants, small hydropower plants, and biogas. So, according to the new policy of Minister of Energy, we will see that the small hydropower plants will be, let's say, on the priority list for the next auctions. As I mentioned, we achieved the first target from our concept to transition of green economy. So at the current moment, production of electricity by renewable energy facilities out of the total production of electricity is equal to 3.05%. If we will go to the September 2019, increase in production of electricity from renewable energy reached 69%. So we have a very, significant increase in the production of electricity from renewable energy sources. What about the results of auctions in 2020? So for the hydropower plants, we have 9 companies, 9 winners. Total capacity was 23 megawatts, so it's quite low. But as I mentioned several times, it will increase. The lowest tariff for hydropower plants was 13.48 tenge per kilowatt, and the highest tariff was 15.2 tenge per kilowatt. What about the solar market? So we have, for this year, we have a very small amount for capacity for renewable, for solar power plant. It was only 60 megawatt. If we will compare with 2018 and 2019, it's very, very low in comparison with these periods. We have 3 companies. Out of these 3 companies, we have 2 companies from Kazakhstan, local companies from Kazakhstan, and 1 company from Russia. Lowest tariff was 14.58 tenge, and the highest tariff is 16.96 tenge. For the wind, we have 3 companies with a total capacity of 64.95 megawatt. Lowest tariff was 15.9 tenge. Highest tariff was 21.53 tenge. For the biofuel, it's not, to be honest, it's not attractive in Kazakhstan for biofuel Ministry of Energy, they're trying to, to give incentives for the biofuels, but still we don't have, investors in this field of renewable energy. And for this year, again, the auction was called off because we didn't have any interest from investors. So let's more focus on the solar market of Kazakhstan. As I mentioned, we have 39 solar power projects and with a total capacity of more than 800 megawatt. As you see from the map on the left side about the availability of the solar resources. Of course, our main large-scale solar plants are located in the south part of Kazakhstan. But anyway, we still have some projects in the center of Kazakhstan, near Astana, near Karaganda city. We have such kind of projects, and it's despite the fact that the solar irradiance is very low in this in the center of Kazakhstan, we have the capacity of these projects is very high. For example, near Astana, we have a project with a capacity of 100 megawatt that was built by Havel, Kazakhstan. It's a subsidiary of Havel Group from Russia. Also, we have in Karaganda region, we have several projects with a total capacity of more than 150 megawatt from that was built by the Goldbeck Solar investor from Germany. So, despite the fact that the center of Kazakhstan is limited with the power resources, solar resources, we still have large-scale projects. It's quite important to say that we see the different investors from worldwide. We have investors from Europe, from Russia, from China, and of course from Kazakhstan. It's very important to note that we also have investors from oil and gas sector. For example, Italian oil and gas company Eni, they have 50 megawatt of solar project in south part of Kazakhstan. Shell, Total Iran, they also have projects in Kazakhstan in solar power production. For example, Eni is going to, as I know, they will start construction of their projects in short period of time. Total Iran is already commissioned their project, and Shell they are on the development stage of implementation of the project. If we'll talk about the equipment, again, in Kazakhstan, we have a lot of representatives from the different countries, different manufacturers. We have manufacturers from China, Europe, and Kazakhstan. If we talk about the solar power market, we have Jinko Solar, we have Ryzen Energy, and of course we have Trina Solar. For example, Trina Solar, they provided their solar panels to solar power projects in near to Turkestan city. The project called Zadarya with a capacity of 14 megawatt. And I saw this project. I was in this project on the land, and I saw that Trina solar panels, they are working and they are very efficient in this project. If we talk about the construction, yes, let's say it's more important for investors and for EPC contractors. Construction period, for example, for 50 megawatt projects, it's let's say it's if we'll talk about the duration, you have to spend around 6 to 8 months, including commissioning procedures. Of course, it depends on the location. For example, in the center of Kazakhstan, you have to take into account the winter condition. So in the winter time, you cannot do some kind of works. But in South Kazakhstan, let's say it's more easy to make construction, and during the 6 months, you can easily implement the project, including commissioning. As I mentioned before, we have different investment preferences for solar energy projects. You can apply for custom duty exemptions for imported equipment, for example, solar panels, inverters, mounting structures, different transformers, cables. All of these types of can receive custom duty exemption. So you will not pay custom duty fees to the government of Kazakhstan, to the local authorities of Kazakhstan. In 2020, we received tax preferences, so you will not pay property tax, you will not pay corporate income tax, and you will not pay land tax. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that nowadays, Kazakhstan government and especially Ministry of Energy, they created a very good conditions for investors. You can easily enter to Kazakhstan. The laws are very, very transparent and they are very clean. So we have just few bodies, and it's the overall steps to make a project is very simple. And again, Ministry of Energy, they're trying to, to push development of renewable energy. But again, the problems that we may see in the future for the next year, for the next couple of years, we may see that the solar power projects will go to the, let's say, to the second point. We want to take into account that Kazakhstan wants to construct renewable capacities, especially hydropower plants. Solar power plants will be less attractive, let's say, for our government. But anyway, as I mentioned, we have to wait the formal decision of the Ministry of Energy. We have to see what they're going to implement for the next year for the auctions. And I hope that we still have room for the implementation of solar power market of Kazakhstan, because on the south of Kazakhstan we have a deficit of electricity, and of course solar power projects in the south part of Kazakhstan will be very, let's say, attractive in different positions. Thank you very much for your time. I'm available for answering for your questions today, or you can directly contact with me by email or by phone number. I'm open to answer to all your questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Jonar. I think it was really useful, and I can see some questions coming in. We'll try to address all of them at the end. Thank you. And I'll now give the floor to Sanya Perzadeva from a Unicase law firm. Sanya will focus on solar PV developments in Uzbekistan. Sanya, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Nessa, for the introduction and for this opportunity to speak today. I welcome all the participants, and thank you, Yernar, for a great overview of Kazakhstan renewables market. This is indeed impressive, and we have interesting and already more than 10 years history of developing solar in Kazakhstan. But today I will be speaking about Uzbekistan's solar energy potential, which is quite lucrative, attractive. And you can see that Uzbekistan had been announcing a number of tenders for renewables, including solar projects, PV projects. And I will quickly go through those projects, and I wanted to outline that the government of Uzbekistan, of course, worked on a new strategy to develop renewables, and in accordance with the national determined contribution under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the government committed to the policy on improving the efficiency and increasing the share of renewables in general country's balance. And of course, in order to meet those power demand, which they outlined and committed, the government of Uzbekistan implemented a strategy to deploy basically up to, as you can see from my slide, up to 30 gigawatt of additional power capacity by 2030. And as you can see, the power, the solar PV is outlined 5 gigawatt, wind 3 gigawatt, and hydropower 3.8 gigawatt. Well, I will quickly go through the current solar projects, which are outlined by the government, and you have probably went aware of those projects, and you heard in the news, and maybe you have participated in one of those. And I wanted to pay your attention on 200 terawatt project, which is being done with assistance of ADB. It's 200 megawatt PV plant in Surkhandarya region. There were 54 expression of interest applied, and out of those 54, there were 18 basically bidders who qualified, who went through pre-qualification. And today, as we can see from the ADB's website, they basically launched RFP process for those 11 pre-qualified bidders. And as I can see from the notice, that PPA is expected to be signed in March next year. And the list of pre-qualified companies include Scatec Solar, Ryzen, Marubeni, Italian company Eni, Jinka Solar, and some other companies. So these are the news up to today, and congratulations to those ones who basically received those RFP and eager to go for the next stage. The most interesting improvement and the news in the emerging market was a 100 megawatt project handled by the World Bank Scaling Solar Program, and Mazda was the winner of the project. And in late 2019, they were announced as the winner to build 100 megawatt PV plant in Navai region. And several IFIs, as you have probably aware, they approved the loans. The construction is expected to start, I understand, sometime next year. Well, and of course, they signed a number of documents, including PPA and government support agreements and some other documents. I will cover some of the provisions of the PPA and bankability issues, and Ton will continue with bankability provisions in PPAs and some other bankability issues which are critical for that kind of projects. And of course, another project is 100 megawatt project, which was awarded to Total Eren through direct negotiations. And originally it was announced in September 2019, but apparently it appears that the project is still the construction hasn't started yet, and expected to be commissioned by 2022. Well, these are briefly those three projects, which are solar projects and which you probably aware. I wanted to also to highlight the role of IFIs in this process, and of course, it's important to say that government of Uzbekistan attracted international financial institutions to handle the projects and to assist them with the development of different laws and concepts. You are probably aware that electricity grid code is being developed, and it's expected to come up sometime next year. The concept for development of electric energy was developed for 2020, 2030. And of course, a number of changes is expected to be made to PPP law. And PPP law is the main provision for handling and managing the renewable energy projects. So there is a great role, of course, of IFIs, and we have to understand and basically to pay the rewards and attention to IFIs who are currently assisting the government in all renewable energy projects. Well, as of solar potential, you're probably aware that Uzbekistan has a great solar potential. Basically, the radiation intensity varies in different regions, but it's still quite attractive. And there were several documents developed, including the Solar Atlas. And basically, without any doubt, Uzbekistan is probably one of those countries where solar potential is very high. And of course, all PV panel producers and developers are interested in working and participating in tenders in Uzbekistan. Well, as I already said, I wanted to go quickly through the Scaling Solar program, which was implemented initially by IFC in African region, in African continent, and it was very successfully also implemented by IFC and the Ministry of Energy in Uzbekistan in October last year. And you're probably aware that Mazda, as I already said, was recognized as the winner with a very low rate of 2.678 cents per kilowatt. And it was, without any doubt, obviously a great success for the winner and for the government of Uzbekistan of carrying out such a great tender for solar in Uzbekistan. And of course, Scaling Solar was developed as a one-stop shop program, and it was aimed to have competitive tariff and also to have to bring the parties to the good rationale, and where the private partner and the public partner have internationally recognized standards. Regarding I also wanted to say about the Scaling Solar 2, which was and the shortlisted company include 15 international companies. As you can see from this from the slide, there are several companies, very well known international companies, including Ryzen, Skatek again, Sungrow Power Supply, Total Iran, University Energy, Jinka Power, and of course Masdar. Some of the companies are also working in Kazakhstan, as Yernar said, quite successfully working, and I guess they're intending to increase their capacity in Central Asia and work in Uzbekistan as well. Well, this is about Scaling Solar 2. And quickly, briefly about bankability issues. Well, you have probably already aware that PPAs are signed for 25 years, which is quite good and of course attractive. And they are drafted and approved by the Ministry of Energy. The off-taker is a national grid company. Well, there are two stages tender for process, and of course there is an expression of interest. As you're already aware, there is also RFQ followed by RFP in order to attract the private partner. And those are all supplemented, implemented by the government of Uzbekistan, which are represented by the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Investments and Foreign Trade, and the PPP Development Agency. There are also some other agencies which are monitoring and supervising the process, but in general, the PPA is quite attractive. The advisors and IFIs try to balance the risks and bring and also attract a tariff, which is a single part output based tariff, 100% indexed in foreign currency, in US dollars, but payable in the local currency. And as I said already, National Electric Grid Company is a signatory to the PPA, which is an off-taker, and the Ministry of Investment is also part of the process, is a signatory to the government support agreement, which is also an important document, providing some guarantees and some investment preferences for the developer. And of course, all those are in line with international precedents and international standards for this kind of projects. And private partner is incorporated in the form of local legal entity. And of course, the sponsors are supporting the project. Well, there are several innovations expected in renewable energy sector. The government is working on changes to the PPP law. There are also changes expected, as I already said. There is a grid code expected sometime next year, which should be adopted quite soon. The currency law is also expected. There are also amendments expected in the currency law. And of course, the process, the tender process is not smooth process. There are several changes to be implemented in the law of Uzbekistan. And I guess the government is working very hard together with IFIs to bring the international standards and also bring the clarity and the clarity to the legal documents in order for the developers and the bankers to approve the projects and basically finance the projects. And the project documents include, as I already said, not only the PPA, but also the land lease agreement, the government support agreement, and the PPA. Briefly, that's what I wanted to say about Uzbekistan legal framework and the project. And I pass it to Tom, who will speak more about bankability and the risks and issues from international perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanya. It was really comprehensive and interesting to hear about developments in Uzbekistan. And thank you for providing this smooth transition to bankability issues, which will be covered by Ton Nansen from FMO. Ton, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will start with the sharing of my screen, and hopefully you can see my screen right now. And as Inessa just said, I'm happy to be the third speaker in this conference because it has paved the way to inform you about how things are going in Kazakhstan, in particular on the solar side, and in Uzbekistan. Sanya explained, let's say, that next to solar there's also a big potential for wind. My name is Ton Nijenstein. I'm working for FMO for quite some time, more than 25 years. It's always a pleasure to be with you in conferences. Face-to-face is my preference, of course, but I also would like to thank Invest in Networks for preparing and organizing this event, and also for, let's say, do some soul searching in getting, let's say, some topics on the table which are important for the audience, which we have today in a virtual manner attending this webinar. I will spend in my presentation a few words on my company. I will then move into, let's say, and you can see that on the third slide, a small slide on how renewable projects in general do operate. Of course, then I will spend some time on debt funding. My profession is in banking, and I will talk a little bit about bankability tests in addition to what Sanya just elaborated upon. And one of the topics which came to the table, in particular from the context of Pakistan, but I think this is valid for the whole region, for whole Central Asia, if not for the whole world in the emerging markets, the problem which we face when interest rates move upwards, or let's say the catchword for that is interest volatility. I'll spend some time with you on that, and in the end I will share some information about FMO, our facts and figures, and also about the debt instruments which we have available for financing these important renewable energy projects. Moving back to, let's say, my second slide, FMO has a vision and a mission. But the most important thing is that as a development bank, we are here to support investors in their, let's say, process and struggles to get the financing in place for all these very important renewable energy projects. And my third slide is the contents of the webinar, which I just discussed. I'm moving now to the second chapter on the structure of energy investments. In just a minute. It's a general picture, and one of the most important things is at the bottom, the PPA, which is, let's say, the source of cash flows for the funding of the project and also for the debt service, but also for the returns of the equity providers, the sponsors. We also have, let's say, the government there, the EPC contractors, the O&M contractors, the communities. But I would like to focus in this presentation on, let's say, the sponsors who provide in general 30% of the funding from their own sources. And then 70% in general comes from banks. And I will provide you some clarity on which kind of banks which we have, what appetite and things like that. But before moving, so I would like to move a little bit to, let's say, the typical characteristics of banks. And as you know, like sponsors, there are big differences between sponsors. Some are, let's say, based in the, or coming from the traditional fossil fuel driven community, and some are, let's say, getting into a pure single asset driven renewable landscape, which I call the pure renewable investors. And there are many mixes, Like we also have many different banks, and I would like to show you in the next slide how that looks like in many countries. We have local banks, we have international banks, we have commercial banks, development banks, and they all have their own way of doing financings. And the most important thing for renewables is, does a bank focus on the total group, the total asset base of the sponsor, and then looks at, as a part of that, at a renewable energy project? Or do you have a bank who looks at, let's say, only this renewable energy project, the assets and the cash flows in particular? And that's a big difference in approach, which we like to call a corporate loan approach on the one hand, versus a project finance approach. What's also important is that the investor community knows the appetite of banks, individual banks, and their capacity to do something. You have smaller and bigger banks, and there should be a perfect match on getting this done. In many cases, it's not one bank who takes all the debt funding on its shoulders. In general, and this increases with the type and the size of the projects, there's a need for, let's say, a joint working of several banks, or even going into a typical syndication market. And that's an important thing, like in many other areas of life. We have to work together in the first place with the sponsor side, but also with the other banks. And this requires, let's say, a good coordination. And that's why in project finance, we have, let's say, a couple of procedures which are different from, let's say, the typical corporate loan approach, which takes the whole group of the, or all the assets of the sponsor into consideration. From now onwards, and this is in line with our approach at FMO, I will focus a little bit more on project finance, because in our energy portfolio, we have relatively little corporate loans being provided or used for financing renewable projects. In project finance, because there are so many risks, different risks, we always use dedicated teams and also external advisors in order to assist us in getting the right thing done, which focus then on the technical risks, the E&S, the environmental and social risks, the legal issues, insurance and whatnot. And as many of you already announced, the key thing about financing is not only trust. I think without trust, nobody would do any financing, but I think the second thing is trust can be tested, and we call this bankability. But bankability is not only for banks important, it's for the whole project important. If you would not check, let's say, what we call the soundness of a project, and usually it's the bank who's checking all these things, and therefore the bankability test is the catchword. But I think banks also have a responsibility to check together with the sponsors whether the project makes sense. And the first thing on the bankability test is, of course, the PPA, because it produces the cash flows. And we need to know which kind of cash flows are coming in local currency, like in Kazakhstan, or in dollars in Uzbekistan. Though Sanya mentioned correctly that, let's say, the payments are first done in local currency, but then converted into US dollars, and that's important. And in both cases, we have to see how the track record of the off-taker is. Very, very important. And I recommend you to read again, let's say, what Sanya mentioned about the PPAs in, and the bankability in Uzbekistan. A similar thing can be done for Uzbekistan and all the other countries. Next to that are the checks and balances on the EPC contracts, with the technology which you use, the operational and maintenance contracts. An important issue which is always debatable, I agree with you, is the quality and experience of management. Sometimes you have big companies who hire or outsource the whole management thing. That's also a possibility, but management in all these things is very important. We're talking about sizable projects, millions of dollars and things like that. The sponsor support is important, but in project finance, this is usually only available during the period of construction and up to the operational phase. Insurance, we should have good insurance, because if something happens, you have to find some recourse and some guarantees for that. Coming from an international active development finance institution, the environmental, social and corporate governance standards are important for us as well. And I think this is increasing for many banks worldwide. Moving on to the types of funding which we can have. Of course, local funding, local currency funding and foreign currency funding. We can have different base rates, and that's one of the things which I will elaborate upon later. You have local benchmarks, you have US LIBOR, you have Euribor. You also have benchmarks in the Japanese market and in Uzbek market, regional markets. So that's very important. The second thing, or the third thing, in fact, is whether the sponsors and the banks agree on having a floating rate or a fixed rate. And if you have a fixed rate, for how long? I'll come to that in a minute. Then there's, of course, a spread. That's let's say, the margin which is necessary for covering the risk which the bank take, because not all projects are successful. The lifetime of the project is important, and the tenor and grace periods for the funding. Fees are important, including the breakage cost. And in project finance, as I mentioned, there are always advisors involved, and this brings an additional cost component. And I would like to suggest that this can be sizable, and therefore project finance is more eligible for projects with a total project size of over, let's say, 30, 40, I would say maybe $50 million US, and convert it into local currency as well. As I mentioned, if you have in the local market or international market found debt available, but you have only variable interest rates, you know what this means. It can fluctuate in future. And there are a number of things which are then, let's say, important in your funding plan. I have here, let's say, a summarized investment plan for a PV solar project, which could be anywhere, with an amount in total of, let's say, 127 million, or in tenge, or in another local currency, or in euros, or in dollars. The currency is not important. The point is, if you have the finance plan in a certain currency, it should be, because let's say cash flows are so important, it should be the same currency as you have the PPA. Going back to Gernard's presentation, where he mentioned that the local PPA is in local currency, this means that it's very difficult to finance such kind of projects in dollars or in euros. So the local banks and international banks who can provide local currency, that's very, very important. And that's the point I want to make, because out of this 127, 89 million has to come from banks, and don't have a mismatch on currencies. That's my message over here. Moving on to, let's say, the typical profit and loss account, which you would see in the projections of any project. You can see that there are revenues coming in by multiplying the amount of electricity generated by the tariff you have in local currency or in dollars, which then, let's say, goes down to operational costs, depreciation and amortization, and the component of debt service on long-term loans, which in many projects, at least in the PV solar case I have over here, amount to about 26% of the total revenue stream. And that's with a certain assumption, which I have put upside on the top, of 8% being the all-in interest. All-in meaning base rate plus spread and some additional costs or fees. So if there's a volatility in the market, whether this is in the local currency market or in the US dollar market, which moves these interest rates from 8 to 12, just look at the impact. The debt service to be paid moves from 3.5 million to 4.2 million. And if you keep all the other components of your costs fixed, the impact on your bottom line is that you have zero profit. And now I'm making you not happy, so I have to come up with a number of solutions how to cope with that. That's in the next slide. And the first thing I would suggest to any sponsor, but also any bank, that if banks have that capability to provide fixed rates, fixed interest rate, please do so. FMO has that capability, more so in dollars and in euros than maybe other banks, but if you want to have them in these currencies, check with us. There are also possibilities to go for interest rate hedges, or even contracts which are similar with some caps and floors. The third solution is that, and we have seen that in some countries, that all debt service costs are factored into the ultimate feed-in tariff or the tariff which the off-taker pays. I call this the pass-through clauses, and Sanja already mentioned this can be also elaborated or covered under government support agreements and things like that. What we also see sometimes is that a central bank or a government provides a green refinance schemes to local banks in order to avoid these interest rate volatility risks. Then there is, to some extent, support from scaling solar programs with the World Bank, which might also assist by providing certain guarantees on these things. And there are always maybe some other options, but I don't have that many. So if you look at all these options, it's very important that sponsors and banks who are invited for this solar or for this renewable project, that they sit together and work out a workable solution, which is also sustainable. But we have to remember that all options which I just discussed on the previous slide do have a cost component. If we talk about the pass-through, it's the ultimate electricity consumer who is faced with a higher tariff. Be mindful about that. If we look at, let's say, some support from the government, we all know the government is nothing else than the aggregate sum of all residents. So it's the responsibility of the taxpayers to allow the government to spend such money. Otherwise, you'll be faced with higher taxes. And if the government doesn't have the money from its current account, then they might even go for a higher debt. I don't know about your personal situation, but I have children, and if the government incurs a lot of debt, I know that, let's say, the next generation will also be liable for paying these taxes, these higher taxes and debt. So in order to keep things simple, I provide you with the next slide with the suggestion that all costs, including, let's say, the interest rates, the interest charges and things like that, are included in the tariff. And from day one, and using to the maximum the options I just described to mitigate or to limit or to reduce the interest rate volatility. My suggestion is to pay for electricity like you pay for your eggs. I hope this is a simple message. I know it's at the same time very complicated to implement with all the stakeholders we have in the sector. Whether you talk about, let's say, Uzbekistan or Ukraine or Bolivia, it's everywhere the same problem that, let's say, we need to work with all the stakeholders in order to find a solution. I'm going to summarize with just one sheet out of 5 on FMO, and you will see that I'm moving quickly from FMO strategy to some information about our bank, about our departments, to the slide where you have been waiting for on the numbers of debt funding which are available from FML. We can provide you with senior loans in an amount of 10 to 75 million for an individual project, whereby we take not more than 25% of the total project cost. This means we also have to work with other banks, and we are ready to do so. We also have some mezzanine. This is a layer between equity and equity and senior loans for smaller amounts. And if there's a need for equity, we can take up to 20% of the borrower's total equity in amounts between 5 and 20 million. We also have some, let's say, other programs. They are on the slide. And I think this is a convenient thing in webinars like this to focus your attention on all the information in this slide or in this PowerPoint presentation, which covers, let's say, maybe some questions you would like to raise but couldn't raise during this event. I thank you for your attention. I wish you a very good day. And if you have further questions or even prospects to be looked at, be welcome.
Thank you so much, Matt. It was really useful. And I think we can move on now to technical aspects that are going to be covered by Trina Solar and Lim Cheng-Yun. I think everyone agrees that the success of any project largely depends on technology side as well. So Lim, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Ton, you need to stop sharing your screen so that I can.
Yeah. I'm trying my best to get this done, and just a minute. I'm so sorry. This is just. I'm switching out. If you.
You should see a button called Stop Sharing.
Yeah, but I don't get the screen right now. Sorry.
Lim, I guess you can start sharing your screen and the Ton's screen will be turned off automatically.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Victoria. I'm now I'm back on the screen and share screen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Lim.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, thank you everyone for the time today, and thank you Investing Network for organizing this webinar. I'm Lim from Trina Solar. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce about Trina and also what are the solutions that we are offering for this renewable energy segment for Central Asia. So as a brief introduction, Trina Solar, we are started in 1997. So we have been in the solar industry for more than 20 years. And throughout along the way, we have been listed in US, and then we shift back to China. And then we have also been world number 1 in terms of global shipment in 2014. And we have successfully relisted again into Shanghai Stock Exchange in June this year. And also we have been ranked 5 times in a row as the world's top most bankable module supplier by Bloomberg BNEF for the last 5 years. So next, let me just briefly introduce about the solar industry module power trend. So as you can see from this graph, is a power bin of solar module over the last 10 years. So in the beginning of this decade, basically, power bins of solar module for mono cell has been increasing about 5 to 10 watts on a yearly basis. But since the last 2 years, we see a dramatic jump from up to 50 watts in the space of 6 months to 1 year. And now we are moving rapidly from the 500 watt era into the 600 watt era, which is made possible by a variety of different technologies and improvement in the solar industry itself. So I think, as many of the speakers have mentioned, when we look at the project, especially, for the solar projects, the key factor that we are looking at is the levelized cost of energy, which will, be able to give us an idea of, the cost of the project, and whether is it viable, and what is the return on this solar project. So from this simple equation, what Trina is involved in is mainly, the supply of a solar module. So we are part of the equation inside the initial investment, and also on the reliability and power generation over the lifetime of the system. So as a brief Trina product roadmap over the next few quarters, early part of this year, the middle of this year, we have launched our 500 module. And then last month, we have started mass production, our 550 watt solar module. And then we target probably by April next year, our 600 watt module will be ready to supply to the market. So these are mainly large scale, or rather large dimension and high power modules that is targeted for large scale utility and large rooftops. So we also have a smaller footprint, which is mainly used for residential rooftop and smaller CNI. So we have also made use of the 210 mm cell size, basically to reach about 400 watt peak for our solar module, which I will introduce in the following slides. What are some of the benefits of all these different power of modules, and which kind of segments they are most suited to be used in. So this is a brief snapshot of the current products that Trina is offering. So we are covering, from the lower power bin, the 300s to 400s, using the 166 mm cell size. And then we also have the higher power bin up to 600 using the 210 mm cell size. So basically, this is catered, for all the three different segments, like the residential, the CNI rooftop, commercial industrial rooftop, and also the large scale ground mounted utilities or large scale floating projects that we are also seeing becoming more and more popular. So in terms of the few key technologies that Trina has been using, we have been using the multi-bus bar technology, the half-cut cell technology, and of course, the dual glass using the bifacial cell. So all these technologies are incorporated together into the solar module to help us to increase the power bin of the solar module. So as mentioned, we have the 210 mm series, our Vertex series. So basically, this is split into two different series. So I'll start off with the Vertex S. So mainly this is the smaller footprint, which is targeted for the small residential rooftop. So you can see from the size here, the dimension of this solar module is slightly increased, but we are able to increase the power bin by up to 60 watt compared to the previous generation of 158 cell, and about 30 watts compared to the 166 cell. And at the same time, when we look at the previous generations and the power bin, we can see that at this particular dimension, it is and this weight itself is actually more suited for the residential rooftop and some small scale CNI rooftops. So when we look at the same size rooftop and we compare across the different products and the different power bin, so by using this Vertex S module, we are best able to maximize the system capacity installation. We can as compared to the others. So we are able to almost increase by more than 50% compared to the early generations. So as this is our new product, we are also giving good performance warranty of up to 25 years, low annual derogation on the power side. And in terms of product workmanship warranty, we are also extending it from the norm of 12 years to 15 years for our Vertex S module. Then next will be on our larger footprint, the bigger dimension and higher power modules, which is mainly targeted for large-scale utility ground-mounted projects with fixed and also trackers. So as mentioned, it's an upgrade of the previous platform of technology that we are deploying. So the single biggest contribution will come from using a larger wafer size. So you can see the wafer size from the early generations of 156, then we have upgraded to 158, and then we have 166, and now we are using the 210 mm. So this is almost about 80% increase in terms of surface area compared to the previous generation. So we have also increased our number of bus bar, which we call it a multi-bus bar. So for example, for our 166 modules, we are using 9 bus bar. And then for 210, it will be a range of 10 to 12 bus bar depending on the model. So this is in line by increasing number of bus bar to cover the larger surface area of the cell. Then moving to the top right corner, we have also upgraded our cutting technology. So previously, we are using high temperature laser to create an insertion in the solar cell and then separate them by a mechanical separation. So this might have some rough edges on the solar cell. So now we have changed to using a low temperature laser to slice through the solar cell and give us very smooth edges, at the same time able to maintain as much as the mechanical capability compared to a full cell module. Then for Trina here, we have also adopted the high density encapsulation technology. So basically this is referring to minimizing the gap between the cell. Conventional cell spacing is about 2 mm kind of spacing. So with this high density encapsulation technology, we are able to reduce this to less than 0.5 mm. So the key advantage of this is that we are able to shave off the few mm from the overall dimension of the module, and then this will help to improve the module efficiency, meaning that we can actually get more power from a smaller space. So just a bit more details on our high power 550 watt. So this is based on a 5x11 half cut cell layout. And then basically we are adopting a low voltage, high current design for this module. So what are the advantages of this low voltage, high current design? So when we look at it at the system level, so basically, in this particular case study, you will see that we are able to connect more modules per string, and also and through this we are able to increase the total power of string by approximately more than 35% compared to others in the market. And this string power itself is a very important factor that will impact our balance of system costs. So when we look at this overall arrangement, when for Trina, when we use the 210 mm cell size, we're able to achieve about 1 to 2 power bin higher compared to the others in the market. So for same system size with a higher power bin per module and a longer string power, so basically overall all these factors will cascade down to the other BOS and give us savings in terms of the mounting structures and the cable length used in the entire project. So based on this case study in China, based on a 100 megawatt project size, we can see the savings coming from the rackings, the cables, the foundation, the combiner box, and the module numbers. So all these will translate to approximately about a US dollar 0.007 kind of savings compared to the others in the market. Then besides our own study, we have also worked with third-party DMVGL consultancy to compare the usage of this large big power modules on a one portrait tracker. So based on the case study done in both Europe and also US for different sites, we do see conclusive numbers showing that overall the EPC cost has decreased for the higher power modules due to the less number of modules, less installation, shorter strings, or rather shorter cable length required, and overall less weight of the tracker. So all these will contribute to the savings in the BOS, and in turn, will also help to reduce the LCOE cost of the system. So besides the one portrait tracker configuration, we have also done other studies to compare the different kind of configuration that is commonly used in the market, like the two portrait tracker, two portrait fixed tube, four vertical landscape fixed tube. So overall, with the different scenario simulation, we do see quite a consistent results, showing that from using the higher power modules, we're actually getting more savings in terms of the BOS cost. Then for these high power modules, we need to have the compatible inverter products to work well with them and maximize the benefit of this low voltage, high current design. So in the market, we are working with various inverter companies to make sure that we have a compatible model that can work well together with these high power modules. At the same time, also, some of the large-scale ground-mounted projects would like to use the tracker. So we have worked with a few different tracker companies to optimize the design so that these larger dimension and higher power modules can also be utilized in the tracker design and be able to fully utilize the benefit of this low voltage, high current design. So moving forward, especially I think over the next couple of years, over here we have already formed the Solar Innovation Alliance, which is moving towards the 600-watt era. So basically, from the upstream, in terms of the raw materials, like the cell, the materials that is used in the module, encapsulation material, glass, etc., and all the way to the downstream in terms of the BOS, the inverter, the mounting, and also in terms of the design testing. We have more than 57 companies already participating in this alliance to develop the long-term supply chain and ecosystem to support the whole industry moving into this 600-watt era and beyond. So for Trina here, we also have our Trina Pro. So basically, this is a one-stop smart photovoltaic solution, which is the integration of the bifacial module together with the smart tracker and smart inverter. So this is to help our clients or the developers to have the state-of-the-art kind of configuration that is able to maximize the power generation and have a very efficient O&M services for your project. So in terms of the tracker kind of solution, we have two. One is the Vanguard, which is catered for 2 in portrait, and one is the Agile, which is in 1 in portrait. So thank you very much for your time. This is a very brief outline of Trina Solar and our products and solutions. Thank you.
Liam, thank you so much. It was really useful and comprehensive. And I think after the information you have provided, it's a good time to launch our second technical poll. So I'm going to do it now. So second poll is now launched. Please take your time to vote. We have 3 questions here. First one, which is the largest growth segment for Central Asia, whether it's utility, large scale, rooftop, floating, or all above? Second one, will high power module reduce cost of balance of system and also levelized cost of energy based on your current system design? And then last question is, what will be the most favorable module power in your next project? Thank you for voting. Just give a minute for others to vote as well, and then I'll share the results with you. Okay, I'm now going to end polling and I will share the results. It's really interesting. Okay, so most of the people believe that the largest growth segment is utility, of course, for Central Asia, and then large-scale rooftop. And some people believe all of the above. 30% say yes, 2-3% higher, and 40% believe that most favorable module power is 500 watts. So great. Thank you so much for voting. Again, we will share these results with you if you're interested in more details afterwards. And now I would like to give the floor to our last speaker today, Stanley Zhu from SunGrow, to cover the inverter compatibility part. Stanley, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Inisha. Thanks everyone for joining this webinar. I will sharing my screen now. Thanks everyone for joining today's webinar. This is Stanley Zhu, Senior System Solution Engineer from SunGrow System Solution Department. Today I will cover the topic how PV inverters adapting to ultra-high current PV module. I will start with the compatibility between the SunGrow PV inverter and Trina ultra-high current PV module, and I will focus some time on the innovative features of SunGrow inverters, and finally I will introduce SunGrow references in Kazakhstan briefly. Here is a statistic about the system BOS cost comparison under different modules. So with PV module power increased, the system BOS cost drops rapidly because of less cable and also less mounting system used. If we include the saved cost of less combiner box and the PV module itself, the overall system cost will drop more dramatically. So this is the main driver of the emergence of the ultra-high power PV module, because PV business is quite sensitive to cost. On top of the Trina 600 watt ultra-high current PV module, the whole PV system and also the inverter becomes larger and larger. Last year, we launched the 250 kilowatt string inverter and 6.8 megawatts central solutions. Maybe several years ago, when we talk about 250 kilowatts inverters, it must be central inverter. But now, SG250HX with a super high power density and a super low cost per watt makes a great difference here. And regarding the developed trend of PV system, a higher DC-AC ratio and a larger block size are adopted to achieve a higher levelized cost of electricity. For example, it's very common in US that a utility project adopt a DC-AC ratio more than 1.5. And we also have seen some super large, the PV block of 12.5 megawatts in India. Well, let's dive into the compatibility of SunGrow inverters with ultra-high current PV module. Regarding this topic, the string inverter is more complicated than central inverter because the string inverter is 2 levels inverter. So here is the topology of SG250HX. The first level is the MPPT boost unit, which has a limit of 30 amps. So if the input current is larger than 30 amps, the boost units will cap current at 30 amps. So from the IV curve, the working points will move from A to B. And then after the first capping of boost unit, the second unit, the inverter DC AC unit, will cap power at 250 kilowatts if the AC output power is larger than 250 kilowatts. Then there comes two DC clipping conditions: normal DC clipping and abnormal DC clipping. Normal DC clipping is that the DC clipping happens when the inverter AC output is already fully loaded. In this case, there will be no extra generation loss. However, if the DC clipping happens when the inverter AC output is lower than 250 kilowatts, then in this case, there will be extra generation loss, which is called abnormal DC clipping phenomena. Abnormal DC clipping is more likely to happen in high temperature, in high irradiance, where the input voltage is low, but the input current is very high. And based on our rough estimation, when DC-AC ratio is above 1.2, there will be no abnormal DC clipping. This is a general evaluation. So for a project-specific design, you can contact Sungrow for further case-by-case evaluation. So to summary, for 30 amps version of SG250HX and also late coming SG125HX, which will be launched the next Q1, the inverters are compatible with ultra-high current PV module. However, if the DC-AC ratio is below 1.2, there might be potential abnormal DC clipping loss. And also, the 40 amps of SG250HX will be launched the next Q3. So this model will perfectly suited with ultra-high current PV module. Regarding central inverter, it's much easier to be suited with ultra-high current PV module because the central inverter is single level inverter, no boost circuit, and so no DC clipping. And there is no major upgraded needed. Only we needed to upgrade slightly for the fuses in DC combiner box and the inverters. And actually, these upgraded fuses are already available now. For inverters, we have maximum 24 inputs and a maximum 450 amps and 500 amps fuse optional. For combiner box, we have maximum 24 inputs and the maximum 25 amps and 30 amps fuse optional. Okay, after the compatibility of Sungrow inverters and the ultra-high current PV module, I want to go over some innovative features of Sungrow inverters. The first is our featured central inverter, the SG6250HV-MV. The inverter has a built-in PID solutions, which is compatible with both 600 volt AC cable and 1800 volt AC cable. And the inverter integrated auxiliary power for customer load up to 40 kVA. And this model, this is very interesting point. This model reserve the DC coupling ports for the energy storage system. So you see from this diagram, the clipped PV energy during daytime can flow into the battery directly. And during nighttime, the battery can discharge. And also this model supports reverse charging from grid at night. With this DC coupling solution, the battery converter and the PV converter shares common transformer and RMU. So saving cost, but also improving overall system efficiency. And Sungrow can provide the overall system for the DC coupling solution, from battery, from DC-DC converter, from PV inverter, and from the MV system. We already did more than 20 DC coupling projects, and most of them in US, because US usually use a very high DC-AC ratio, and the DC coupling system is very suitable in that scenario. And also, we integrated the data logger we call the SCU into our inverter. So no external data logger needed for customer, saving cost, and it's very easy to have maintenance on site. And we use the CAN bus between SCU and the DSP, and there are two independent channels, which one is for the parameter setting and the other is for information uploading. So we can achieve a very higher power response speed. The Q response, the reactive response time from inverter receiving command to inverter outputting the reactive power is lower than 30 milliseconds. And we already passed a field test in UK with G99 grid code, which is the most strict grid code regarding the response time. And our inverter can keep stable operation when the short circuit ratio is as low as 1.2. We have an overall hardware in the loop testing facility in our headquarters, which can simulate different weak grid condition. The self-constructed grid functionality is another strong features. So as we all know, the HV connection is always the last stage of the whole utility plant. And sometimes the delay of HV facility construction will make commissioning job very tight. However, by using our self-constructed grid functionality, the pre-commissioning job can be finished even without connecting HV facility. So in this case, one inverter can work as voltage source and the other inverter works as the current source. So without connecting the HV facility, all inverters can be in operation mode. And also the inverter works as a voltage source, can also power the auxiliary load. So there is no need for a diesel genset anymore. And for our string inverter, we also have many strong features, but due to time limitation, I just pick up our patented anti-PID solution. Our anti-PID solution is integrated into inverter, so there is no need for customer to buy an external PID box, saving cost for customer. And besides, you can see from this diagram, we have a PID module in DC side. Besides the normal anti-PID daytime mode, where the PID modules lives around the 10 volts from PV negative to ground, we provide another PID recovery mode, which works in nights. For PID recovery mode, this PID module lifts a certain amount of the voltage during night to recover the PID effect, which is accumulated at the daytime. And this PID recovery function is applied to both TN and IT system. And it's also applied to both 600 volt AC cable and the 1800 volt AC cable, saving the cable cost for customer further. And of course, our SG250HX supports smart online IV curve scan. So actually, our smart online IV curve scan is certified by TUV, and we have some very good reports. And in total, there are 17 fault categories supported by our system. And for 100 megawatts project, the plant IV scan can be finished in 10 minutes. Regarding the reference in Kazakhstan, we already did 6 utility projects, and totally it's around 300 megawatts. So we have different, like 1000 volt system, SG 2500-MV, and also the 1500 PV inverter. And also we have 130 megawatts project, which is just in commission recently by using SG250HX. So we are quite familiar with Kazakhstan grid code, and we are also quite familiar with the local requirements. I think that's it for today. So thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you so much, Stanley. I think it was really interesting. I'm afraid we are running a little bit slightly over time, but I'd like to address just a couple of questions for the Q&A section. And luckily, quite a lot of questions were addressed by speakers in writing. And again, if you have any further questions, you can always get back to our speakers directly, or you can email us, and we will then facilitate your introductions. So the question that I would like to raise comes from Davron Sharipov. Davron is asking, do you predict any requirements on the localization of spare parts and the equipment utilized in solar power plants in Uzbekistan? But I guess this also concerns Kazakhstan. So can anyone address the question on localization of technology in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan? Yernar, Sania?
Yes, Inessa.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Just a second, I have some problems with connection. Sorry, just a second. Okay, I think it's good.
Yeah. Yes, we do hear you correctly.
So, yeah, regarding the requirements on localization of spare parts and equipment, yes, for solar power projects plants, Yes, we had some, let's say, cases when some, let's say, parties in Kazakhstan wanted to, wanted to propose, or even they proposed some ideas to implement such kind of requirements. They wanted that we need to have some localization of equipment in Kazakhstan for all renewable energy projects. Yes, and Ministry of Energy and we as a solar power station, we are completely disagree with these proposals, and the reason is that it's very simple. We are living in the open market. If we will give let's say advantage to some producers, even if it's local Kazakhstan producers. So to be honest, I'm from Kazakhstan. Yes, I have to be a patriot of Kazakhstan, and I'm a patriot of Kazakhstan. But I have to we have to think in the right way. And from our point of view, it's not right to give some advantage to local Kazakhstan producers of equipment, because again, we're living in an open environment, and the company that will have best solution, technical solution, and this company has to win, and I will give you an example. We had a case of Astana Solar. Astana Solar, it was Kazakhstan manufacturing facility in Astana, and they produce solar panels. And unfortunately, they closed. They go to bankruptcy, and the reason why they went to bankruptcy, because the solar panels of Astana Solar, first of all, they were not bankable at all. International financial institutions, they, of course, it's a big question. Do we have a track record for these solar panels? Because it's completely new equipment, and no one knows. Is it okay? They don't know about the efficiency. Of course, we have a technical specification, but it's just written on the paper. No one can guarantee that these solar panels of Astana Solar will give you necessary output. And after several years of production, they still have problems with the selling, with the supply of these panels, and this facility went to bankruptcy. So, and the story ends with Astana Solar. So again, it's bad. It's it's an example how it's not to do, what is it not right to do, But we have another example of how you can do it in the right way. We have a company in Kazakhstan. It's called Alageum Electric. They are producing high voltage equipment, including transformators and other equipment, and they are very successful. They providing transformers to solar power plants in Kazakhstan, and they doing it in the right way. They didn't ask about some incentives from the government. They didn't ask to implement some requirements. They just simply work, and they simply in competition with, for example, with Chinese producers of transformers, and they're doing well. They proposed best solution with affordable price to investors. That's all. That's why I don't think that in the future we will see some requirements in Kazakhstan for the local companies. And from our point of view, it's not the right way to promote localization of Kazakhstan equipment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonar. And Sanya, are you aware of any regulations in terms of, the need to localize technology in Uzbekistan?
Well, I wanted to add a few comments regarding Kazakhstan. I respect Yernar's position, and I wanted to add that there is indeed a special tariff for PV panels which are being produced in Kazakhstan. And we have Astana Solar legal entity, which is currently still alive. They're still producing some panels for small-scale renewables, and they have a special tariff, high tariff. which is quite attractive for those ones who don't want to bring panels from abroad. There is a long history about the Astana Solar, and we are currently advising the government on arbitration, which is going on against the French company, which offered and implemented this transfer of technology. Unfortunately, it's a sad story, and of course, I wouldn't wish Uzbekistan to follow this route. But there were several factors which influenced on this failure, and basically, at that time, Kazakhstan was not confident and strong enough to understand and provide their own opinion whether they are ready or not for this transfer of technology. But in general, Kazakhstan is very rich with regard to silicon, and we have very high quality silicon, which gives great opportunities for investors who want to develop those silicon fields. In connection with Uzbekistan, we don't have official government representative now among us, but as far as understood from discussions with the government representatives, they are not ready to promote and encourage local production. There were discussions with Sky Power in the past who wanted to develop renewable projects and also develop production of panels. But as far as we know, Sky Power is no longer is not signing any agreements currently, and the negotiations had put them on hold. So briefly, this is about Uzbekistan localization desires, and they understand that the market is changing very quickly and very competitive. PV panels are being provided by the neighboring country, China. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have anything else to add on that regarding localization? If no, Sanya, before you go, I know that Kazakhstan is quite experienced in holding auctions, and you mentioned that Uzbekistan is moving towards auction mechanisms as well. Do you know if these are going to be technology-specific auctions only, or is there a chance to have technology-neutral auctions in Uzbekistan?
Well, Uzbekistan discussed the auctions, as far as I know, some time ago, but they decided towards tenders. Now several IFA is now advising to the government, including USAID, whether or not to hold auctions. And auctions are, as we advisors usually say, that that's is the best instrument to choose the developer. Currently, the discussions on auctions are still ongoing, but they're not developing they're not going into any exact directions, whether to hold it on technology based or on some other principles. But we expect that those issues will be raised again by the developers and IFIs in the next year, and we will see how the government will handle this.
Thank you so much, Sanya. Don, can I ask you, what do you think about technology-neutral auctions, and do you think this is an option for Central Asia or for emerging markets to speak so?
Thank you, Inessa, for raising these questions. You know, I have to be careful because, let's say, auctions are a perfect idea in textbooks at, let's say, at school, and they are also, let's say, a valid instrument and a tested instrument in some markets, for instance, telecoms and some others. in order to get, let's say, for instance, licenses at a very attractive price to a certain extent. In the energy market, and just look at the history of energy markets over the last 150 years, it's, let's say, an instrument which has only been applied in a number of cases in a number of countries. And I'm not telling you here that, let's say, you need a lot of experience or 100 years of experience in order to do an auction. But I would say auctions at the moment and worldwide in the energy space are, let's say, focusing on renewables and not on, let's say, the thermal business or the nuclear business. If we talk about, let's say, competitive bidding for EPC contracts, this is somewhat different than an auction for having, let's say, the lowest tariff for a certain period of time in local currency or in US dollars. I think Uzbekistan has started, let's say, with an what I call a competitive bidding process in order to get, let's say, the first solar projects in place, and we are moving into renewables, or let's say the wind farms as well. I agree that with solar, with wind, the investment costs are, let's say, decreasing every year. At the same time, this means that the levelized cost of electricity can also go down. However, to which extent depends on, let's say, many factors. And one of the things which is important to realize is that the bigger the company who is participating in an auction, the more leverage they have on, let's say, getting the lowest price on the EPC contract and all that. So they have an inbuilt, and this is, let's say, from an economic perspective, quite reasonable, an inbuilt competitive edge compared to, I would say, the local players or the medium-sized players who have additional costs, don't have the same, let's say, purchasing or bargaining power in EPC contracts and things like that. So there's a balance to be made in order to have what I call not a landscape with only big giants, but also a landscape in the electricity market where many players can act. And what's important is if you have a more atomized landscape with a lot of players in the electricity, renewable electricity sector, this also facilitates newer developments. They will be capable of doing more innovations on a smaller and on a medium size and on a big scale. I would advise to continue with auctions. However, take very much care of, let's say, the dynamics of an auction, and whether it not ends up with only one or maybe two companies taking everything, which leaves out, let's say, the possibility for the medium scale and the smaller players in the local markets in particular to participate in a sector which is really going to innovate further, has a potential in terms of megawatt over all these countries in Central Asia and in emerging markets. So once again, don't take the simple textbook advice on auctions. Look carefully, take care of, let's say, various components and factors in order to have a balanced outcome, which might also mean a little bit higher tariff than what you initially could get from just one big player. So this is my advice. I'm in favor of diversity and that all investors, being big and small, can participate in such auctions. Right. So this is on a simple note, my contribution on auctions.
Thank you so much, Don. I think we are going to wrap up now. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for very interesting, comprehensive and well-structured presentations and for addressing so many questions in writing as well as verbally. Thanks a lot. Huge thanks to Trina Solar for making this event possible. Thanks to all the participants for your active participation, and we'll make all the presentation available to you within 24 hours. Stay muted, participate in future energy talks as well. Stay healthy and safe, and see you again. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.